the bells of the convent tolled for the last time. High in the hills of Thessaly, where olive trees shivered in the autumn wind, a small band of nuns gathered inside their fading chapel. They prayed beneath cracked frescoes, saints with faces long scraped away by age and sorrow. On the horizon fire shimmered, Ottoman banners were already visible, red cloth fluttering like sparks across the mountains. The women knew exactly what that meant. No riders came from the nearby towns, no soldiers remained to guard them, only the stillness before conquest. Their abbess sister Eleni of Lissa stood before the altar holding a silver crucifix that had survived a century of storms. She whispered, "If they breach our walls, keep your vows inside your hearts that they cannot take." But she was wrong. When the empire's armies reached the convent gates, vows, prayers, and sanctity meant nothing against what history tried to erase. If you are drawn to documented records from the Ottoman Byzantine frontiers, do not forget to subscribe. It helps us uncover more of the accounts buried in archives, from missionary letters to Vatican reports. Now back to the story. The first stones of the convent collapsed before sundown. The hymns that once filled those halls were drowned out by iron and screams. The Ottomans did not waste arrows on holy places, they shattered the gates with cannon fire, both a warning and a declaration. To them, a convent was not sacred ground, it was a symbol of defiance, proof that the cross still dared to rise in conquered soil. Inside, the sisters hid their relics, silver chalices, embroidered icons, fragments of saint bones beneath the chapel floor. They believed if their bodies were lost, their faith might still endure. But the soldiers were not after treasure, they wanted evidence, proof that they had crushed not just the enemy's armies but their God. By nightfall, the surviving nuns were herded into the courtyard. Torchlight turned their white robes into shifting gold and shadow. They were told they would be taken before the Pasha, a promise few ever lived to see fulfilled. What followed became legend, so grim that even church chroniclers avoided the details. By dawn, the convent was ash. Smoke drifted from the refectory where the women once shared bread and silence. Ottoman flags fluttered from the bell tower, signaling nearby units that resistance was over. Yet in that courtyard something unexpected happened. The soldiers waiting for screams heard singing instead. Bound with rope, the surviving sisters began to chant a hymn not of despair but defiance. The Agnus Dei, Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Their voices trembled but never broke. The Ottoman captain, unsure whether to laugh or silence them, ordered the abbess dragged forward. Eleni still clutched the silver cross rescued from the altar. The captain promised mercy if she renounced her God and accepted the conqueror's faith, but her reply sealed her fate. She said she had already given her life, and nothing more could be taken. The captain hesitated, then turned away, leaving her to his men. What followed was never fully written, even in Ottoman records that glorified victory. European letters later recalled her name, Eleni of Lissa, the nun who would not kneel. By midday, the convent's bells were melted for coin, and the cross atop the roof was sent east as a trophy. Villagers said that when the wind swept through the ruins, voices could still be heard praying. Soon after, the survivors were forced south. 22 women in torn habits, their ankles bound, were driven toward the coast by Ottoman horsemen. They were not prisoners, but symbols of conquest. The march was merciless, the sun burning the earth beneath their feet. When one fell, another lifted her veil so soldiers would not trample it. Their abbess was gone, but her last words guided them. If you cannot hold the cross, hold each other. After 7 days, they reached Volos, where Ottoman ships waited. The women were herded aboard, shackled to wooden benches once used by slaves. The overseer, Isef Ager, kept detailed ledgers listing them among the cargo. This record, found centuries later in Istanbul, confirmed a story once thought legend. The voyage lasted 12 days through storms and hunger. Yet what broke them most was silence. Sister Magdalena whispered psalms at night, her faint voice calming chained men nearby. When Constantinople rose on the horizon, its domes glowed like blades in the dawn. From the docks, they were paraded through the streets. Locals stopped to stare at Christian nuns among captives. In the shadow of Hagia Sophia, they knelt as the muezzin's call echoed above. One whispered that they were home, but it was no longer theirs. Before dawn, They stood in the Divan Humayun before the Grand Vizier. Mercy was offered for conversion. Those who refused would face the discipline of faith. Sister Deiries stepped forward and said they could be renamed, but their prayers could not be erased. The vizier replied coldly that prayers fade when tongues forget. With a motion of his hand, they were sent below the palace to serve in silence. Some called it mercy. Others knew it as another kind of death. It was meant to break them, to turn holiness into servitude, but the Ottomans underestimated them. These women had already lived under vows of silence and denial. Hunger, cold, and solitude were not punishment for them, but devotion made real. Even in darkness, their discipline became armor. At night, they prayed in secret. One carved a cross into clay, another traced verses into dust. They measured time by the muezzin's call, not as conversion, but as defiance. Soon, whispers spread through the servants' quarters. People spoke of silent sisters buried beneath the palace who never spoke or begged. Some called them cursed, others saints. Their silence grew louder than any prayer. Months passed. Their hands blistered from work. They washed linens and polished brass that warmed others, but not them. The empire believed hunger would bend faith. Then came a test disguised as mercy. Kindness appeared first. Food, oil, and silks were sent. Gentle voices offered peace. One imam said their gods were not enemies. Take our tongue and you will be free. But they knew that forgetting was the one sin they could not commit. Sister Magdalena, once frail, rose as their strength. Her half-remembered verses kept them alive. When persuasion failed, cruelty returned. Torches died. Food was cut. Silence ruled again. One by one, they were taken to repeat words of submission. Those who obeyed lived in the palace. Those who refused vanished. 2 sisters from Corfu gave in. They were dressed in silk and never seen again. For the rest, each disappearance hardened their resolve. Sister Deiries grew pale but fearless. When asked her name, she said softly, "Call me Silence." From then on, no one spoke to their captors again. Their stillness became control. To the Ottomans, they were failed conversions. To history, they became proof that faith could survive where chains could not. When spring returned, only 11 of the 22 remained. Servants whispered of strange voices at night, singing the hymn from the convent's final hour. Beneath the palace, they found a hidden archway. It became a secret chapel. A scrap of linen served as altar cloth, a shard of mirror as a cross. There, they prayed in whispers. Memories of home became psalms. Centuries later, archaeologists found carvings beneath the palace, Latin words half erased, lux in tenebris lucet, the light shines in darkness. The women had not vanished. Their faith had become immortal. Not with weapons, not with protest, but through faith that refused to die, the sisters endured. When a new sultan rose to power, only a few remained, aged and forgotten, yet their hidden chapel still stood beneath the palace. Centuries later, excavators uncovered the faint marks of their hands, proof that their faith had survived the empire that silenced them. By 1482, a new ruler sought to erase weakness from his court. In the archives, under long lists of servants, a blank space appeared where 21 names should have been. The ledger read, "Unfit for service, disposed." No dates, no graves. This was how history buried them, through silence. Yet that silence became evidence. Only what shames power is hidden so carefully. Fragments from diaries and letters later revealed their defiance. They were not forgotten, only concealed. The last mention of Sister Magdalena came from a traveler who wrote of a woman singing until her guards sealed the room. The chapel lies in ruins now, but the carvings remain, faded prayers in stone, whispers of faith that would not bow. In their silence, they still speak, reminding us that some truths live even when empires die.